Good morning. How are you? My name's Nicole Laughlin. I'm with Our Homes, Our Votes campaign, and we're here to talk about getting ready for the election and voting. So this is a Know Your Rights conversation with our good friends at the Secretary of State's office, Common Cause Rhode Island and AARP Rhode Island. And we're just going to go through all the things you need to know for Election Day. Just a quick introduction, the Our Homes, Our Votes campaign is a nonpartisan voter mobilization effort aimed at increasing voter participation among low-income renters. We're going to do some quick introductions to all of our guests here, and then we're going to get right into it. Kathy?
Hi, good morning. My name is Kathy Placencia. I am the Director of Elections for Rhode Island Secretary of State Gregg Amore. And I've been in elections for about almost 20 years now. I was the Administrator of Elections for the City of Providence for 17 before coming on to the Department of State.
Very nice, thank you. Nick?
Morning, Nick Edwards, Elections Information Coordinator for Secretary of State Gregg Amore here at the Department of State. Been with the team since 2021.
Thank you. Matt?
Hi, Matt Netto, Associate State Director of Advocacy for AARP Rhode Island. I've been here about 4 years working on our voter education campaigns.
Thank you for joining us. John?
Hi, I'm John Marion, Executive Director of Common Cause Rhode Island, been here for over 15 years. And we both advocate for voting reforms and expansion of voting rights in Rhode Island, as well as do voter education and lead a large voter protection effort in the state of Rhode Island. Thanks.
Great, thank you all for joining us today. So we have a group of questions that we're going to ask. Again, anybody can jump in at any time, but this first question is for the Secretary of State's office. So Kathy or Nick, what else is on the ballot besides the race for president and vice president? And how do voters preview their ballot?
So aside from president and vice president, there will also be local races on the ballot. State races such as your representatives and senators, federal candidates, your senator in Congress and your representative in Congress. We also have some ballot questions, they're state questions and local questions depending on the city or town. You are able to view a sample ballot on our website at vote.ri.gov, where you can check to see if you're registered to vote, view a sample ballot, your polling place, location, the hours of your polling locations, and we also have all of the state questions listed on our website at vote.ri.gov. There's the voter information handbook that lists all of the state questions, not the local questions.
Great, thank you.
Could I just add, I strongly encourage people to look at the sample ballot before they go to vote. Some of the municipalities in the state have put a large number of local questions on the ballot. Those can be both efforts to pass bonds for school construction and things like that, but also changes to city and town charters. So for instance, the town of Westerly has a 3-page ballot because they have put so many local questions on the ballot. So make sure when you're in the privacy booth on election day, that's not the first time you've looked at your ballot, because it's a lot of information to consume.
Thank you for that. John, Rhode Island has made voting easier in the last few years. What options do voters have for casting their ballot?
Sure. So there's 3 main ways to vote in Rhode Island. You can vote by mail, you can vote in person early, or you can vote on election day. At this point, it is not recommended that people vote by mail unless there are some sort of extenuating circumstances. But early voting is going to be available until 4 p.m. on Monday the 4th. And in most municipalities, that's at your city or town hall, although there are exceptions. So you should contact your local board of canvassers to find out where that's happening. So you could vote early up to 4 p.m. on November 4th. And then Election Day is November 5th, obviously, and it's from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. In all 39 cities and towns. And you can find out your polling place using the Secretary of State's website, vote.ri.gov. Remember, a lot of polling places have changed for voters since the last presidential election because the state did redistricting. So where you voted 4 years ago might not be where you vote this time. So it's important to prepare if you're going to vote on Election Day.
And just going on to mail ballots, how does somebody know if their vote has been counted? And what are our recommendations for mail ballots at this point in time for getting them in?
Yeah, so if a person has a mail ballot, I think the important part is to make sure that you return that as soon as possible. You can either, I wouldn't recommend mailing it because it does have to be received by Election Day at the State Board of Elections, or at one of the Dropbox locations. So there are 41 Dropbox locations across the state, one in every city or town, usually at their city or town hall. There is one located outside of the State Board of Elections in Cranston, and one outside of our offices at 148 West River Street. So my suggestion is that they either drop it off at their local Board of Canvassers, they can place it inside one of the Dropbox locations. But mailing it at this point, you just want to be sure that it does get to the State Board of Elections by Tuesday. If a person needs to request a mail ballot, they have until the 4th of November to do so by 4 p.m. Or they can cast that emergency mail ballot at the Board of at their local Board of Canvassers. Anyone that has not received their mail ballot, give us a call. Call your local Board of Canvassers, give us a call. We will do everything that we can to make sure that you receive your ballot. And one way that a person can track their ballot is using ballot tracks. They can sign up for ballot tracks right through our website at vote.ri.gov. And it's almost like tracking your Amazon package. You have information as to when your application was accepted, when your ballot went out, when it was received by the local board, by the State Board of Elections, and if that ballot was accepted, or if there's some kind of deficiency where you have a chance to cure that ballot. Again, just make sure that do turn in your ballot as soon as possible, and that it is at the State Board of Elections or one of the Dropbox locations by 8 p.m. on Election Day.
Great, thank you. What happens if someone shows up with an ID card that doesn't match the address on file? John or anybody can answer this.
I can answer. So your ID does not, the address on your identification does not have to match the address that's on file. What does have to match is that you are who you are. They're just matching your name and date of birth, and that it is you, that your picture matches who you are. But the address does not have to match.
And I would just add, if a voter does not have the correct ID, or an ID that is expired more than 6 months ago, or the voter even refuses to show an ID, they have a right in Rhode Island to cast what's called a provisional ballot. So if a voter falls into one of those categories on Election Day, they can cast a provisional ballot at a polling place. They'll have to fill out a provisional ballot application. They'll be given the ballot, and then they'll be given a receipt to track whether the provisional ballot was counted. So it's important that people know they have the right to cast a provisional ballot, and that if they do cast a provisional ballot, they take the receipt with them so they can follow up on the status of that ballot.
And another thing that I will add is that if a person does not have a picture ID or any of the forms of ID that are acceptable at the polling location, we do have free IDs for any person who does qualify. or if they have an ID that no longer represents their appearance today and they would like to get an updated ID when they go to the polls on election day. And so we are open on election day here at our office. And if a person doesn't have an acceptable form of ID, they're more than welcome to stop by our office and apply for a free ID.
Thank you. Matt, if someone is not registered to vote, can they vote for president and vice president on election day?
Yes, if in Rhode Island, if you missed your voter registration day and you're unregistered, you can register to vote on election day, but you'll only be able to vote for the president and vice president. You will not be able to vote for any state congressional, Senate districts, school committees, anything local. You will not be able to vote for. You can register at certain locations that is determined by your local board of canvassers. So you should probably contact your local board of canvassers to find out where that location is for election day. It is not going to be your normal polling place, most likely. So call the board of canvassers locally and they'll direct you as to where to go to register and vote for the president and vice president.
Thank you. And just to go off of that, I'm sure Kathy and Nick can answer this better, but why can people who are not registered vote only for president and vice president?
So Rhode Island has a 30-day voter registration requirement, except in the case of president and vice president. So anyone who is registers to vote 30 days, and I know that we have one of the longest registration deadlines, but anyone who registers within that 30-day deadline, it is a law that they're able to cast a ballot for president and vice president. And so because of that 30-day deadline, which is the reason why a person is only able to vote for president and vice president and not any of the local or state races or any questions on the ballot.
Thank you. Matt, are there any resources for seniors or disability communities to get to their polling location on election day?
Yes, there is. They can use the RIDE program, look into the RIDE program that's through RIPTA. They can call 401-461-9760 for more information on that. There are some certain criteria they need to meet, and there's a nominal fee, but it is available and operated by RIPTA. Other options, you could, public transit, if you can get to public transit, you can utilize that. Or also Uber and Lyft are offering 50% discounts on election day if you prefer rideshare.
Thank you very much for that information. And this is for anybody. Do you see misunderstandings about election rules or requirements leading into this election?
Yeah, I'll just say, we see every election misunderstandings about how elections are run in Rhode Island. A common one is some people think that their mail ballot doesn't count unless it helps determine the outcome of the election, that only election day votes count, and mail ballots aren't counted unless it's going to change the outcome. Not true. Just one example of sort of misinformation or disinformation that is out there. The important thing for voters to keep in mind is you should always go to what we refer to as a trusted source for information about voting. The trusted sources for information about voting are the folks who run the election. So the two main websites in Rhode Island are vote.ri.gov, which is the Secretary of State's website, and elections.ri.gov, which is the State Board of Elections website. Between those two websites, it has every piece of information a voter would need to successfully cast their ballot in Rhode Island. So if you're seeing information from third-party groups, it may be well-meaning, but if you want the most accurate information, always go back to the sources that come from the folks who run elections themselves. Each city and town also has a board of canvassers, which would have a website although they're not as typically as comprehensive as those state resources.
And I would just add there too, also, the websites are great. You can also dial 211 to get voter information 24 hours a day, for those that, may not utilize the internet as much as others.
Yeah, and just to add to everyone's point is, our main focus is being the trusted source of information, and having all of that information on our website at vote.ri.gov. So to get the most up-to-date and accurate information, contact the Rhode Island Department of State, contact the State Board of Elections, go to our websites. We have a ton of information on voting and knowing your rights and voter ID. There are how to your sample ballot. It's a great resource, and it's the trusted information that folks want or need.
Very good. If there's anything to add to this, but what do you tell people in terms of their voting rights on election day? Is there any, guides or anything that you would refer to?
Yeah, I would point to the Rhode Island ACLU has a wonderful brochure called Know Your Rights, Voting Rights in Rhode Island. And they have that in English, in Spanish, in Khmer. And so that is a great resource from the Rhode Island ACLU. I think it's also worth mentioning there's a special population in Rhode Island that often goes unmentioned, which is the formerly incarcerated. So the formerly incarcerated in Rhode Island, once someone is released from prison, if they had been convicted of a felony, immediately upon release, they become eligible to register and vote. They don't have to serve their probation or parole or pay any fees after their release. They're immediately eligible again if they're otherwise eligible. And so the formerly incarcerated don't have to take any other steps post-release other than the normal registration step to participate in our elections, which is a great thing. There's also another population, which is folks with disabilities. And there are a couple options there. There is a braille or tactile ballot that's available from the Secretary of State's office. And then every polling place has an accessible machine called the Express Vote that can help folks who have visual disabilities as well as certain physical disabilities as well as audio disabilities. And so everyone can take advantage of that equipment at every polling place in the state. It's called, again, the Express Vote. Individuals who may not have a disability can also vote using the Express Vote. And Disability Rights Rhode Island, which is a federally funded advocacy group on behalf of the disabled, runs a hotline on election day. If a voter with a disability encounters any problems, you can reach out to Disability Rights Rhode Island.
Anybody else have anything to add there? No.
Yeah, I mean, your voice, your vote is your voice on election day, or days leading up to the election. So if you're an eligible voter, this is your chance to participate directly in our democracy.
Okay. This question is probably more for the Secretary of State's office, but what is done to make sure voting equipment is working correctly on election day?
So the testing and the voting equipment is all run by the State Board of Elections. So they do the LNA testing, which is the logic and accuracy testing. So any issues with the system or with the DS200s or voting equipment on election days or during the early voting period, that's all reported to the State Board of Elections. They're the ones that handle and procure all of the state voting equipment.
And I would just add, the state board did something great this year. They created a series of YouTube videos, and those YouTube videos explain logic and accuracy testing, like Kathy just talked about, the qualifying of mail ballots. They're very short videos, so if you go to YouTube and search Rhode Island State Board of Elections, you will see a series of videos they produced that explain these processes. There's also an audit that occurs after the election, what's called a post-election audit. And all of these processes are public. Logic and accuracy testing is open to the public. Mail ballot qualifying is open to the public. The post-election audit is open to the public. So people who are interested in making sure the machines are tested and the results are audited can see for themselves.
That's great. If anyone has any questions, what resources are available and or who should they call?
Call 211. We have a great partnership with United Way. They're available 24 hours a day. Call the Elections Division at 401-222-2340 or your local Board of Canvassers. And you can, all of the information that is available on our website at vote.ri.gov. Again, great source of trusted information. Check to see if you're registered to vote. Find your same day locations. If you're not registered to vote, find your polling locations for those who are registered to vote. Make sure that your information is accurate before going to the polls. And again, viewing your sample ballot. Knowing what will be on the ballot on election day is important. So just be prepared. But 211-401-222340 for the Secretary of State's office or your local boards of canvassers.
Right. Well, I want to thank you all. I want to leave some room if anybody has any last minute, things they want to talk about or anything that we didn't get to today that they feel like is important to mention.
Yeah, I would just emphasize this is a presidential election in Rhode Island. Any Rhode Islander who is otherwise eligible should be able to cast a ballot, at least for president and vice president. So no one should be walking away after November 5th and not having a chance to cast a ballot if they're otherwise eligible. It is different than other elections in that you can use this same day registration option to cast that presidential and vice presidential only ballot. So we hope everyone is able to successfully cast a ballot on or before November 5th.
Great. Well, I just want to thank you all so much for joining us and for educating everyone on behalf of Our Homes, Our Votes campaign and Homes RI. We hope that this is a great tool for those going on into Election Day and to educate their residents in their communities. So I appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful day and good luck in the election.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.